Good evening. Thank you for joining us at the City of Castle Hill City Council regularly scheduled meeting, February 27, 2018 at 6:30. Mayor Howell is not available, so I will be leading the meeting. First, we need to determine if a quorum is present. A quorum is present. It is 6:32, and I'll call the City of Castle Hills regularly scheduled council meeting to order. Mr. Rapley, do we have a invocation? Okay, we can skip that. The Pledge of Allegiance?
We do have a Boy Scout available.
Perfect. We'll let him get to it.
I'm sorry? A newly minted Boy Scout.
Please stand. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you for that. We have acknowledgements and presentations. Are there any that we have? Okay, since we don't have anything, do we have anything on the citizens to be heard on non-agenda items? I'm not sure if anybody signed up. Mr. Flynn?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to be heard. I am Dr. Mike Flynn, and I live at 111 Amerson Lane. I'm here to respond to the comments made by citizens during the discussion on whether to censure Councilman Douglas Gregory. I feel those comments were full of distortions, misleading statements, apples and oranges comparisons, hyperbole, hypocrisy, and spurious allegations that must be refuted. The discussion about Councilman Gregory pertained to his actions while chair of the Streets and Drainage Committee. In response to the demand of its constituents, the City Council took up the challenge of repairing our streets. After much open discussion, the majority decision was made to have a firm called Cartograph collect pavement data and develop a condition index to prioritize the streets for repair. The resulting indices, contrary to some people's opinion, the resulting indices were objective in that they were originally created independently of any input or adjustments from members of the council or Castle Hills citizens. Consequently, the council decided to prioritize street repair using only the Cartograph results. The preponderance of the evidence suggested Councilman Gregory pressured staff to adjust the index scores. I do not know the rationale between Councilman Gregory's actions, but whether they are a result of poor judgment, an effort to satisfy the requests of neighbors, or an effort to have his street paved ahead of others, they were clearly unethical and did not consider the needs of the entire city. Although maybe not as badly as some, my street also needs repair. Unlike some people in Castle Hills, however, I am willing to play fair and wait my turn rather than pressuring my elected officials to break the rules on my behalf. But now I am left to wonder, was my street moved down on the repair list as a result of Councilman Gregory's actions? If so, Councilman Gregory's actions were blatantly unfair to me and others as well. As part of his defense, Councilman Gregory referred to the scoring discrepancies between the most recent pavement condition study and an earlier one completed in 2009. He stated nobody could explain those discrepancies to him. Those are valid concerns and could be attributed to different methodologies or changes to the pavement during the intervening years. However, the more recent data would reasonably be expected to best represent current pavement conditions. In my opinion, many people in this community are easily manipulated by certain individuals that are motivated by their own selfish purposes. If a different council member had done what Councilman Gregory did, there would have been howls of rage to drain the swamp or obey the rule of law. In their defense of Councilman Gregory, some citizens maintained that he did not deserve censure because he did not break the law. These people seem to equate ethics with legality, and therefore anything that is not illegal must be ethical. Still, other citizens saw the effort to censor Mr. Gregory as an effort to keep him from being reelected. As an administrative punishment, censure does not prevent Mr. Gregory from performing his duties as councilman or running for another term. Another commenter felt that the effort to censor Councilman Gregory was creating bad publicity for Castle Hills. This ignores the behavior that led to the censor effort in the first place. Some citizens defending Mr. Gregory would also have the rest of us see him as a victim of a conspiracy by the other council members. To believe in a conspiracy calls into question the integrity of the other elected officials on the council. I commend the council for having the courage of their convictions to pursue this censor effort. I know that being subjected to vitriol that you had to endure was unpleasant. However, if maintaining our convictions were easy, it would not take much courage. Take solace in the fact that you were subjected to a biased sample of citizens that were present merely to defend and excuse Councilman Gregory's behavior. Their calls for honesty and integrity ring hollow. Their words are not matched by their behavior and are disgraceful. They should be ashamed of themselves. I would also like to commend the leadership of Mayor Howell. In spearheading the city's efforts to address our street problems after 30 years of delay, we are finally seeing some much needed solutions to we are finally seeing some of our streets getting paved. He has made progress on developing much needed solutions to our stormwater drainage problems, and finally he has helped bring in additional businesses to increase tax revenue to pay for those activities without increasing property taxes. Mr. Mayor, if you were here, you could take solace in the understanding that certain people resort to name calling when they are unable to win an argument on its merits. I believe that some Castle Hills residents will never be satisfied with results unless they are solely to their benefit. They do not like the actions being implemented, but either cannot or will not recommend alternatives. Instead, they seek only to obstruct. In conclusion, the choices before us are simple. Either we play by the rules or not. Either we want ethical government or not. Either we support a participatory democracy or not. Integrity has been described as doing the right thing even when nobody is looking. I believe integrity is trying to consistently adhere to a defined set of values, even when doing so is not to my benefit. We cannot have our cake and eat it too. Thank you again for this opportunity to be heard by the Castle Hills City Council.
Thank you, Dr. Flynn. Next, we have the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items that they would like to pull?
Yes. I would like to pull item number C, the minutes from the work session on January 23rd, and the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on December 12th.
And I second that if it needs a second. Were you motioning?
Yes, I'd move that. Move that we pull C and F.
And I second pulling C and F.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Ms. McGlynn?
Are we speaking on those two that we just pulled? Or are we going to speak on the consent agenda? How do we?
I imagine we can just speak on the two you pulled.
I would like to pull C. In reviewing the minutes from the meeting, the work session on the 23rd, I found that there were way too many factual inconsistencies in the way they were written versus the way I remember the meeting happened, and I feel like we need to go back and review the tape on those. I mean, my comments and my suggestions are just too numerous to discuss this evening.
Okay, I actually had one for item number C as well, so if everybody's okay with that, I imagine that we can table that, or I'm sorry, postpone that so that you have a chance to sit down with the city secretary to correct those. Do we need a motion to do that, or are we going to pull all of them? How would you like to proceed? Okay. Okay, so can I get a motion to pull those two?
I move that we pull items C and F from the consent agenda for consideration at our next regularly scheduled meeting.
And I go ahead and second that.
Second, all in favor? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Now we go back to the original with A, B, D, and E.
I do have some corrections on these minutes as well.
Okay,
On item B, the special meeting on February 13th, there's just a grammatical change that needs to happen underneath the table where we've got the members of council present or absent. City staff, in the last sentence, there were no citizens were in attendance, there were no citizens, delete the word were. In number 1, I believe we have to leave it, it said negotiate fees when the notice went out, but I believe we were explicit when we approved that we were not negotiating or considering fees, we were simply adopting a list of approved engineers. So the motion was not to provide, for these companies to provide municipal engineering services, they were to be on a list of approved engineers for the city. And those were the only changes I had on that one. I have others on other meetings, but if we want to talk about one at a time.
anybody else on A?
Yeah, that's negotiate fees because it was assumed, but the reality is we don't negotiate the fees with engineers. We just discuss and go job by job.
Okay, Ms. McGlynn, did you have anything else?
Yes. Yes, on item D, which are the minutes from the regular meeting on January 9th. Would you verify that we have Mr. Kenny's name spelled right? And I believe Mrs. Scott has a comment on that one, so I will let that for her to mention. There is a section on page 3 under old business under number 5 where it's a whole paragraph. Mayor Howell invited Police Chief Siemens to speak, and he requested the council's approval, and that was from another section, so that whole paragraph needs to be deleted. Under that same item on page 4 at the top in paragraph number 2, where it says Councilmember McGlynn thanked the residents for their comments. I don't recall it being a resident. If we could go back and just, I believe it was a blanket comment that I thanked the residents for their comments on the issue, not just one particular resident. And then on the last page, page 5 at the top, where it says Mayor Howell invited Mayor Pro Tem Trevino to speak, in the last line suggested that further appointments be subject matter experts, not be matter experts, and possess experience, and that council adopt operating procedures, not that we have operating procedures. And I think that was all I had on that meeting's minutes.
May I make a comment on that same? It's already on the desk. Minerva made a correction with my comments with regard to, no, that's the wrong set. I'm sorry. I looked at the wrong set. But that's okay.
Yes, on this one, under citizens to be heard on non-agenda items, yes, as we stated before, we need to check the spelling of Mr. Kenny's name. And according to my notes, and I double-checked with him, that he stated that in the future, he asked that a plan be in place before any other plan be implemented that would cost the city to lose revenue. So he didn't ask how we are going to replace lost revenue from the property owners over 65, but he requested that in the future, should another such action be voted on by or proposed, that there already be a plan in place to replace that lost revenue. So that just needs to be reworded to indicate that he did not want to know how this revenue is going to be replaced. He wanted to know have a plan in place ahead of time for any other opportunities that came up for people to vote on something that would end up costing the city revenue.
Do we have any more corrections?
Yes, I do on item E, the special meeting on December 20th. I actually have quite a few on this one. On the first page, under consent agenda, B, accepting the treasury report, Councilmember Gregory, I don't believe that he highlighted the treasurer's report having inconsistencies. I believe it was his notice of the special fund balances and a discrepancy in the amounts of those. If we could go back and just verify which one it was. On page 2, under old business, number 1, I don't believe that that City Manager Bandawali spoke about the legalities impending the implementation. He was talking about the status, and one of the issues he had was regarding legal concerns about the platform available. So if we could, the second paragraph, due to legal concerns, I think his legal concerns had to do with the platforms available, not concerns that might arise in the future. And then there are a couple of typos. Councils in the first paragraph should have on the next to last line should have an apostrophe S, and I think there's an extra width in there.
Within the treasurer report is included the fund balances. That's why it's considered treasurer's report. So it's an inclusive umbrella.
Then the only other change I had was on page 5, under number 8. Under the motion, Councilmember McLean motioned to proceed as recommended by the city's litigation attorney.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
In my opinion, I think we should, or I would recommend to table the rest of these minutes and revisit them and obviously clarify these points and address them and bring it back to next council meeting together.
Would anybody like to make that motion?
Which would be a motion to,
Don't we already have a motion on the table to accept everything except C and F?
Yes, sir.
Okay, are we going to vote on that motion?
Yes. Can we get a vote on that? All in favor? For the original motion on C and F? Oh. That was Ms. McLean and a second by Ms. Scott.
Well, I suppose I could amend the motion to include all B, C, D, E, and F and pull those until they're corrected, and then we can approve corrected minutes.
yes.
Okay.
So I will amend my motion to pull items B, C, D, E, and F under the consent agenda for correction and consideration at our next regular meeting.
Perfect. In a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, now, public hearing, we don't have anything. No new business, no old business, no discussion items. Do we have any announcements by council? You start over here on the side, Ms. Scott? Ms. McLean?
No announcements.
Mr. Paul? Okay, two small comments that were brought to my attention. We're inviting everybody to come out and meet the city manager, Mr. Ryan Rapley, at the council meeting on March 13th. It's a meet and greet. We're going to hopefully have some drinks and sweets. And there's also going to be an upcoming candidate forum that Mayor Howell will be able to provide more details on in the future. That is it. Can I get a motion to adjourn? First by Mr. Paul, second by Mr. Gregory. All in favor? Okay, we'll be adjourning at 6:52.